All right. Well, you're doing everything right. Your content is being published. You're optimizing pages. You're doing all of the core SEO work that you've been doing for many, many years, but something's still not right. Site traffic's down, conversions might be down, and really a lot of the clarity that you had one day may not be there. We're seeing that happen across the board. It's more and more in all the conversations we have with some of our schools that we work with, as well as others that we're talking to in the industry. And today we're going to break down a lot of what's hype and what's not in the SEO, AI, AEO, GEO world. And we have today Julian Hooks, who's an industry leader, been in an SEO game for a long time. I've known Julian for probably 15 years or so, and excited to have this conversation. Welcome back to our university podcast for higher ed marketers and leaders who want to change the game and themselves. I'm Rustam Irani, a former higher ed CMO, as well as a recovering engineer and passionate digital marketer. So love to jump in. Julian, welcome to the show. If you don't mind doing a little bit of background on you, your experience, kind of your years in SEO, which I know are quite plentiful. So welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, definitely. And for the audience here, my name again is Julian Hooks. I've been doing, SEO's been the only job I've had after, actually since before college, actually. So I started SEO in 2000, graduated high school in 2006, started SEO in 2007, just building my own first websites and trying to get traffic to them. And that kind of led me down a path, and I've been doing it ever since. So that would be coming up next year. That should be 20 years of being in the trenches, driving organic search. And I've got into higher ed marketing in 2012, shortly after moving to Florida. And that was really eye-opening, but I've always had a foot in higher ed marketing. Pretty much ever since then, I've had at least, some connection to some universities and schools and their marketing programs.
Awesome. Well, it's funny when I think back at, Julie and I have had a long history. And what's amazing about this, and I'm a big believer in this, is you want to kind of cheer people on as they grow and as they succeed. And Julian and I actually worked together. Julian was our head of SEO at a school I was working at. And Julian came to me one day and said, "Hey, Rustam, I appreciate everything and it's been fun, but I'm just crushing it with some of the stuff that I've done, some of the sites you built and so on." And you're like, "I just have an opportunity to focus on this." And I remember that so vividly, Julian, because I was so proud of you. I was so happy for you. Obviously not for us at that time, but that's what happens. And that's what it's about. It's about the individual. It's about the success of the individual. And what's amazing is the full circle of how we're working again together, right?
Yeah.
That works, right? Good people kind of stay in touch and cheer each other on and eventually kind of come back around. And I'm so glad we're working together again. All right. Well, here's the deal, Julian. You work on the SEO side with a number of our clients, and you see what's going on. You've seen kind of across the board. There's a lot of talk about SEO being dead because of AI. AEO, all the LLMs are stealing all the traffic, right? So, what's your honest take on that? Because I believe some of it's noise, but what's your take?
So SEO definitely is not dead, especially if if you're gonna bet on one of the big AI players to quote unquote come out on top. That might be Google. I would lean towards Google over a Chat GPT or even Claude. They're kind of carving out their niches right now, but there's so much, and there's a reason that so many SEOs are the default AEO, GEO people. And it's because there's such an overlap with this new channel, because if you think about it, the LLMs, they have to get this information for them to operate somehow. And they're using the internet. And how do you surface information on the internet? They're all using search engines of some sort to crawl and retrieve information, especially real time information. It's one thing to have a data set because you've been crawling the web for however long, however many years you've been crawling, but that information gets old really quick. So you're constantly having to refresh your training models or the data that they're trained on. And so that's why a couple years ago, maybe 1 year ago, you'll see a lot of, especially ChatGPT, it defaults to doing a web search for the majority of questions or prompts that people put. And regardless whether they're using Google or Bing or some other search engine to do those web searches, they are still going out on the web and doing a search. And that's where the SEO overlap comes in because they're doing searches basically on the user's behalf. So it might not be a student on Google searching for, what's the best program or university for me. It's them asking chat or one of the other LLMs. And then that bot goes out and does the search on the student's behalf, pulls in, compiles the data, does the analysis, and then spits back the answer. So there's really a large overlap on SEO. And then marketing and branding in general, there's all still overlap. You'll see really, really high correlations between strong branding and strong visibility in the LLMs, as well as strong SEO and strong visibility in the LLMs. So still important, very much so.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I think like one of the things also, right, the terms that are out there, AEO, answer engine optimization, or it's GEO, right? There's so many different terms. Like, how are any of those different? Are they different? Or is it just kind of a different way to say answer, like LLM optimization? Is there any differences there?
I personally don't think so. I think people are trying to create definitions that'll serve different buckets.
Yeah.
So in the local SEO space, I see them using GEO much more often than anything else.
Okay.
And then when you think kind of just national in general, anything that's not like the local space, I'm seeing answer engine optimization more prevalently. So I feel like they're trying to carve out some more strict definitions in terms of generative engine and then answer engine. But at the end of the day, it's like that AI search channel, I think, is just that one new channel. And I personally just say AEO,
Okay.
but it doesn't matter to me. And I don't
Yeah.
think it really makes a huge difference.
So I guess the other question is, how impactful is this right now? Do you think? How much effort should a school or university be putting towards optimizing for AEO or GEO and so on? And what's awesome, and this is kind of a little bit of a kind of layup since we've worked together to build an AEO dashboard, right? That shows you exactly kind of what's happening in the platform. But yeah, I mean, how much effort or time should people be spending outside of the core SEO, which is still critically important?
Yeah, I think it's very important and it's going to become more important, but it's also difficult to put, let's say, a number on it because this new channel, the attribution is just almost not there at all. It is one of those things where it's like, you're doing the right thing, but you might not be able to prove it just yet, but you have a lot of signals. And, that in business, it just comes down to, like doing great business or having a great product. And it's like, what is the attribution on just having a great product or having great customer service? Like, there's so many things that you'll never know exactly how many people, student or customer, told about their amazing experience.
Yeah.
Like, you might get a review out of them, you might not get a review out of them, but they might have told 50 people how amazing your school is, your product or service, what it's done for their career, X, Y, and Z, and you'll never be able to attribute that to other people who signed up. So it's similar in that vein where it's like we know if we do the right thing, it comes back in ROI, but the attribution just isn't there right now. So there's a couple kind of clues that you can see. We do have the little bit of attribution. So you can look in your analytics and see the traffic, the referral traffic coming from the various LLMs. But we know the click through rate out of these LLMs is really, really, really small. And so we know there's so much more happening there. Like you might be getting 100,000 visits from an LLM, but there's likely maybe 100x more times that you were mentioned or talked about, or someone saw your brand name or you were cited. But we just don't have that kind of volume numbers right now. And I'm hopefully when the paid search or the paid ads and campaigns are open broadly and widely to everyone within the LLMs, they'll have to start supplying some type of metrics because you can't just spend and have nothing to track for it. So I'm hopeful that that's come in the future. But right now we have the referral traffic from the LLMs. Other thing that we look at, and we kind of pair this with the SEO, because you might be seeing organic traffic numbers come down. And more now than ever, even as an SEO, I have to look at all channels because people didn't just disappear. The people just, they're not all of a sudden not searching anymore. They're just, their behaviors change. They're searching somewhere else. And so it's our job to figure out like where the users are now doing their searching or what's their user behavior now. So what we're looking at direct traffic across the board on lots of schools and other sites that I've seen and have access to, direct traffic is going up for a lot of people. And that's kind of the catch-all bucket
Yeah,
for
that's
when,
balance.
GA doesn't exactly know where they came
The
from.
balance we're seeing exactly, Julian, is the
Yeah,
direct bucket. It keeps growing,
yeah,
right?
direct is growing. Keeping an eye on your branded traffic as well, because that's likely tied to that direct traffic. And so what's happening is if someone's searching or using an LLM and they're getting an answer and that answer is your brand, then the next thing they do is, if they're not going to click that tiny little link or there is no link, then they head to the search engine and then they type in your brand,
Yeah.
or they just, maybe they type in your URL if it's super short or something like that. So that direct and that brand traffic should be growing, and that's likely tied to some AI behavior and AI search behavior if you're not, if you haven't done some giant brand campaign at the same time, if you haven't done anything that should be massively increasing your branded search, then it's likely that AI channel is heavily influencing that. And so those are a couple clues where you can start tracking and looking at these things for kind of that direct attribution.
Yeah. And to that point, I think one thing we also are seeing across a number of, again, our conversations we're having out there and the schools we work with is some of the traffic is down to the sites, but the folks that are coming through and engaging, let's say they're engaging with live chat or they're filling out a lead form, their actual application or interview rates or their enrollment rates, we're seeing a bit of a lift actually from the folks that are coming through. And I think one thing that's interesting that I think there's a lot of data that we can still look into. And this goes back to understanding a little bit of what's happening in these searches in the LLMs is, are they getting the information through that versus having to speak with somebody or versus having to dig into the website? So there could be areas where they're getting information right off the top. For example, cost, right? If they want to know the price of a program, they may be able to kind of just research that pretty quickly. Perplexity is amazing at giving research, right? As well as any of these LLMs. So I think that's an interesting thing that we're seeing across the board. I know you're seeing that as well. And to that point, I think one area, maybe you can speak to this because I have just been pretty impressed with what you've been doing, with what you've been building, Julian. In the dashboard, you've really pulled together a real overview and look at what is key and what is important. And there's 4 key factors that you have developed out into this dashboard, which is visibility rate, share of voice, citation rate, and overall sentiment. And maybe you can kind of speak to like a little bit of that, like when you were building that out, what your thought process was, and like how you see that kind of shaping what people are looking at now.
Yeah, definitely. So I always knew that the very first step in getting a handle on this new channel was some type of measurement. Because you got to go from somewhere. You have to start somewhere. And I had no clue like what's going on in this black box that are these LLMs. And so there's been a lot of SaaS companies that have popped up, and they start doing these trackings, and I've tested the majority of them, and some I'm still customers with some of them, and they're iterating on things. But again, with the use of LLM, the vibe coding, like a lot of these things, if you're a small shop, or you just don't have the budget, because some of these softwares are extremely expensive. I'm seeing the pricing come down now because I think some of the they realize that people are just going to figure out other ways to do this themselves. But yeah, you want to know, and here's kind of the process we went through. Since we don't have prompt volumes, but we can still rely on traditional search keyword volume as far as the topics go. So we know, people are still searching for, business administration programs, or what's the best school, in my state or my city, or, what salary can I expect with this type of job, XYZ. So we know those searches are still being done. And so we have that kind of top level data in terms of search volume. And so what we do is we take those key terms and we kind of turn them into conversational prompts. And so that's where we start with the tracking. Like, we know what's important to the school, we know what's important to the students. And so we create those conversational prompts there. And then we start tracking those to see, as a response is coming, how often is our school mentioned. And then we do go a little bit deeper, because there is, and I'll get into that because that's kind of the next step, but it's just how often is your brand being mentioned? Are they linking to you? So is there a chance that someone can click through to your university or website? Share a voice. So, how often in comparison to your competitors? So are they sharing 10 schools at a time, which is a lot for a prospective student to have to process and just be like, okay, well, you didn't really narrow it down
In the
for me.
result, in the result,
Yeah, in terms of results, it's like if
the,
someone asks, what's the best school near me, and they get 10 results, it's like, oh, thanks, I could have done that myself. Now I still have to dive into 10 different results. Or are they giving a top three or a top two? And so with the share of voice, you also get that number, in terms of, what's the percentage of you versus the competitors. So that helps, like, kind of give context to that visibility score, because the visibility could be very high, but they could also be mentioning 10 schools every single time. So yeah, you're showing up, but your share of voice is now only 10%.
yeah.
So visibility high, share of voice low. It's like, all right, we're showing up, but so is everybody else.
Mm.
So that also helps us give context to the visibility number. Then we have the citation, which is at least a chance for them to just click right through to your website. And then there's the sentiment, because we know just because you're being mentioned, doesn't mean they're saying nice things about you. So, the prompts aren't always like, what's the best? Someone could be like, what's the best and worst? What's the pros and cons? Similarly, things like that. And so sometimes the response will say, this school is great for this, but according to these reviews and these Reddit posts and this affiliate website, they don't do very well in these areas. And so you want to know that when you're showing up, what's the sentiment behind that as well? Is it positive? Is it neutral? Or is it negative, in which we need to maybe activate and figure out where they're getting this information from, and seeing if we can go out there and resolve that.
Yeah. And I love that you have built that out. You looked and utilized many, many tools. And, I can tell you, that's one thing I've loved about kind of working with you over the years is you're always kind of looking to learn and improve, and then also figure it out and start to build. And I've done my share of vibe coding as well, which has been pretty exciting recently. And maybe I'll talk about that. I created a really cool heat mapping app that shows you kind of whatever data sets you're looking at. But we won't go into that today. But I think the other thing here, Julian, is, there are, I guess, people that are still a little confused about the traffic that's coming through and the real true impact of, LLM searches. Do you think that's kind of overhyped right now with the actual impact versus core SEOs and SEO fundamentals, and still building relevant content that speaks to EAT and making sure your schema is probably making sure your site loads fast, making sure all those fundamentals are in place? Have you ever thought of a number? Are we like 90% is still core fundamental, 10% maybe? Or have you seen it kind of increase? Where do you think that number is? I'm just curious. I don't think we've ever talked about that, but I'd be curious.
I think it's still very high, 85,
Okay.
80 on the core fundamentals. And then because a lot of those things, when you get into the technical details of how the LLM work and how they're crawling your site, like speed is always going to be a factor. Like
Mm,
if the LLM is trying to retrieve information for a user, it can't wait a minute for your site to load to get the information. It's just going to time that out and pull something out or just omit it. So like when you think about those things, like if you think of the LLM bot like as a user because it's coming to your website to retrieve information, like it still wants it fast, easy to find, structured so it's easy to understand. So all those things still play a very big part in that visibility. The 15 to 20% things that might be different or tweaked or changed just comes down to how the bots are synthesizing information and how it might be a little bit different than a user. So, for example, we know now, that many of the LLMs, there's a limit, like a payload limit on how much of the page they're going to load. Because again, they need to do things quick because they not only do they have to load your page, they're loading 10 to 20 other website pages. Then they also have to go through that information and then give the answer to the user. So they're working on a quick timeline. And so the big long articles, they are great, they're good for humans, but sometimes maybe you need to rethink or reshape them. And you're always, you don't want to forget the little guy, the humans, everyone else, just to try and satisfy the LLM bot, especially when you don't even know like what the volume or traffic or impact is there right now. So
yeah.
it's like you don't throw away the playbook and like only care about, oh, this is good for LLMs and at the detriment of your search or your organic. So like right now, one of the hot things is like short, snippy content that just gives the answer right away is good for LLMs. And so what are you just going to delete all your articles, your expert guides and things like that and just serve up a paragraph instead and lose all your search traffic so you can try and get some visibility in the LLM? Well, that's obviously not the way to go.
Yeah.
So that 15 to 20% is thinking thoughtfully of, okay, how do we create an experience that's great for search, traditional SEO, our user base, our students first and foremost, and then also how do we serve any LLM bots or crawlers that are coming to the website as well. And so people are testing having like a markdown page or file versus just the HTML file. They're testing things. And what I've found to work, what I like is just maybe edit your copy so above the fold, that most important answer is right there. So traditionally, people are like, oh, we need time on site. Let's bury the lead. Let's put it at the bottom or in the middle, like that real meaty answer that they came for. Just
Yeah.
go ahead and put that on top. If that's all they need and they get the answer and then they leave, it's okay. You don't have to force them to scroll to the bottom to kind of get the information they're wanting. And that serves two purposes. Now you still have all your content for people who are really interested and they're going to read through the whole thing. For people that just want to skim the TLDR, they get what they want at the top and then
Yeah.
they can make their decision to either leave or continue on. And then for the LLMs, right there at the top half of that content, they also get what they're looking for too. So they come, they get the information they need, take it, and then they're gone. So that kind of serves everyone. And so that's what I've been seeing is working kind of really well. And in that same vein, with the information, it was kind of already commoditized with the internet, but at least people, you had to go to the website and, people could sell ads on those eyeballs and there was a real marketplace there and a good amount of value or perceived value because at least you have that traffic number. You can say these people came to the website, they saw our brand, they had an opportunity to engage with us. And that opportunity is valuable, whether they took it or not. And so now with a lot of that top of funnel content, they don't have to go to the website to get the answer. And so that's one of the big things about the traffic drop. A lot of it is top of funnel.
Yeah.
If they're not already thinking like 2 to 3 steps ahead, like once I find this out, then I got to take action on something. If it's just information only, that's the traffic that a lot of us are losing right now. They get the salary information from the box. And this started on Google with the rich snippets before, and entire industries have done that with Google Flights, calculators. There used to be calculator websites, got a ton of traffic. Now there's a calculator on Google. Same thing with flight searches. Expedia and others, they sued Google for this same thing. Google's like, I will give you all the flight information right here. We're also affiliate with all the airline partners. So use Google Flights. So that killed industries when they're just taking all the information and serving it up right there. And so now this is that on steroids. First, it was the rich snippet. They were just pulling out at least a sentence or a paragraph. Now they're pulling out entire answers, taking all the content, just giving everyone everything they need without ever leaving that ecosystem, whether it's the LLMs or whether it's Google. Google's now merging more of their AI mode into the traditional search. So it's more and more AI, less leaving the Google ecosystem. And that is really, really driving down these traffic numbers.
Yeah.
But like I said, a lot of that is informational. People still need to book the flights. They're still ending up, if you have to take that next real world action, then you still have to do something. So those people are still there. And that's why you're saying the people that do go through, we're seeing increased conversion rates and increased engagement because those users that are at the bottom of the funnel that are ready to take an action, they still have to take that action. So they're still there, but a lot of that top of the funnel traffic is gone. And while we do say it's less important because they're further away from taking that action or becoming a student or a customer, it's still important in terms of eyeballs. You want as many people to see and go to your site and have it in the back of their mind as
Brand
possible.
exposure. I mean, it's
Yeah,
brand
so
awareness,
that brand exposure and awareness is going. And I think that is, it takes a while for that to hit the bottom line, but it is a thing. And that's why the visibility portion on the LLMs is like, well, we need people to see us, see our name, and know we exist. And before they can do anything, they have to know we exist. So that's why the visibility is still very, very important. And if you're not going to get that visibility kind of on the organic search side, that's why you have to start making sure that you're visible in as many places as your target audience is going to be giving their attention to.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think, and again, you brought it full circle to kind of the conversations we're having right now with a lot of marketing leaders and schools is the people that are coming through. The intent is quite a bit higher. They've done some of the homework and they're coming through and we're seeing the impact of that. But don't ignore the folks that are coming to your website from a remarketing or retargeting perspective. There's so many other opportunities there. This, as usual, this time usually flies by, especially when I speak with somebody who is just so extremely knowledgeable kind of in a subject. And I appreciate, Julian, kind of your background, what you've been doing over the years. You've built sites, you've done so much, and it's just been awesome to continue to work with you. I guess just to kind of wrap it up, like if you were to say, like, you've kind of seen where some of our schools are, where some of the focus is, and what they're looking at. And if you were to kind of say, hey, when you were talked to a current marketing leader or CMO, what would you say is kind of the key thing for them to kind of look out for right now, or just stay on top of? I think, even one or two things, if you had some advice just from what you're seeing, from what we're seeing, like, here are a couple of things just to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think what I've been, because a lot of times we really zoom into the specific channel and how is this one thing working, whether it's paid campaign or whether it's organic. And what I've had to do personally, and I think it's good for all of us, is to take a step back and kind of look at things more holistically and start thinking about these marketing, the schools, the businesses, and the marketing campaigns more holistically. Because as the attribution gets fuzzier, and it's harder to get a grasp on the user behavior, and the information is more democratized, that it really becomes, as a whole, how is the university doing? We're talking direct, organic, offline channel, like what are we doing outside of the computer and the internet, and wrapping that all together and looking at things as a whole. I think it'll help relieve some stress and really help get a better picture on how these different channels are working together. And I found that that's been really helpful for me trying to make sense of a lot of these things, especially when I see organic traffic down. I'm just like, what the heck is going on? I'm like, the impressions are still there. People are still searching. I was just like, oh, but this is going up. And this went up more than organic went down. So what's going on here? And so really just taking that step back and looking at things holistically, and then also realizing that we're marketers, and if you're in this, it seems like this has been happening forever. It's been what, 2.5, 3 years since ChatGPT came out. That's really not a long time. The adoption, we're early adopters. People watching this podcast are early adopters. If you're using AI, you're early adopter. The rest of the world still largely is not in here yet. So also keep that in mind.
Whether you just use basic type stuff.
Yeah, basic, free version. Like there's so many different things in the evolution to come. And so that's why I think in that, and also getting back to basics and focusing on some core things that permeate through any type of marketing, anything you do, is, just focusing. We say, like, it's really easy to sell a great product. Like, very similar thing. And I don't think that's going to change in the LLM world, where it's, if you got the best in class faculty and campus experience, and students are happy and they're getting kind of the outcomes that they were promised or that they expected and things like that. Like, that is going to work. And so there's those things, and then just showcasing that to the world in every way you can. So, maybe that is social. It's social. TikTok is getting bigger. TikTok organic is getting bigger. TikTok has a local presence now. So there's lots of different avenues, whether it's the Reddits of the world. There's just, wherever your users are, like, there should be some type of engagement there. And if you're doing kind of the basics right, then all you really have to do is just share experiences. And then that makes marketing a lot easier, because, your students are basically doing it for you.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Julian, I am grateful to be continuing to work together, to have known you for so many years and continue to learn from you every day in our conversations and the work we do together. And the key takeaway here is SEO is not dead. It's not dying. It's still very much alive. It's just realistically being absorbed into a broader discovery ecosystem. That's kind of what I would say, right? There's a bigger discovery ecosystem out there. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at all of this. And down funnel, attribution, make sure you keep a good picture on what's happening. Well, Julian, I appreciate you coming on. Great chat. Great to speak with you. And that's all for this class of ROI University, where the big ROI is personal.
Awesome.